I would firstly like to talk of the current issues which higher educational institutions face, and that is from three stakeholders. Majorly one from the students, the other from the faculty side, and the third from the management side. Normally, students when they enroll in schools and later on with the course of age and education, when they come to the higher educational institutes, we find that they come with conditioned minds, and so their thinking horizons are so narrow. It is very difficult to open up their imagination, open up their minds to the broader world. So that's the biggest challenge that we are facing today. But the question is that, again, is the system allowing us to change our pedagogy so much? Because we have a fixed curriculum, we have a fixed assessment scheme, we have a fixed teaching and examination scheme. Do we want to develop an entrepreneurial mindset in our students? What we need to develop is an entrepreneurial mindset. So what do we mean by an entrepreneurial mindset? That the student has to be curious. He has to look at opportunities. He has to be creative. Very good evening to everyone. So, I think I must firstly appreciate the organizer because the topic is actually very timely and very significant. And the policymakers also have their thinking hats on, because with the rollover of the new education policy, everybody is looking towards a significant and tremendous change in the way the curriculum would be designed, the delivery would take place, and the way assessment would be done. So I'm looking at it from three perspectives: the curriculum design, the teaching learning process, and the assessment. And just to build the context, I would firstly like to talk of the current issues which higher educational institutions face. And that is from three stakeholders. Majorly one from the students, the other from the faculty side, and the third from the management side. So I'd like to start with a small story. I'm sure most of us would be aware of a name called Mr. Ivan Pavlov, rather Dr. Ivan Pavlov. So he was a physiologist and an experimental neurologist. And what he did was that whenever he served food to his dog, he would ring a bell. Now, normally, when a dog is served food, he would salivate in the mouth, and that's a positive response to a positive stimuli. But ringing of a bell is a neutral stimuli that does not generate any response from a dog. But when both of these were done together, so ringing of the bell and serving of the food, over a period of time, whenever the bell rang, even if the food was not served, the dog salivated. And this proved that a mind could be conditioned, and that is the birth of classical conditioning theory. And of course, over the course of time, this theory was experimented on human beings also. It is a discussion of whether it was ethical or unethical. But I think the point to be driven here is that normally students, when they enroll in schools, and later on with the course of age and education, when they come to the higher educational institutes, we find that they come with conditioned minds, and so their thinking horizons are so narrow. It is very difficult to open up their imagination, open up their minds to the broader world. So that's the biggest challenge that we are facing today. Second is the priority for short termism. Marks, degree, grades, all of this is more important than long term value creation. Then looking at the impact that their learning will have in their future careers. So, this is the second problem that we are facing from the students' perspective. From the teacher's perspective, they are used to conventional methods of teaching. As my predecessor rightly stated, that we have some tried and tested methods. Of course, with the coming of the digital era, we're looking at some change in the way we teach. But the question is that, again, is the system allowing us to change our pedagogy so much? Because we have a fixed curriculum, We have a fixed assessment scheme. We have a fixed teaching and examination scheme. So are the teachers autonomous to change the way they like to deliver the course? So that is a bigger question. So it's not about a teacher's ability or willingness, but more, I think, a systemic problem at our end. And the third, if we look at it from the management perspective, of course, there's a lack of infrastructure and resources. So, especially when NEP is talking of a digital infrastructure of academic bank of credits, do we actually have that infrastructure in place? Or I was just looking at a report by MHRD, which states that higher educational institutes, on an average, spend about 24,600 per student per year. Imagine such a measly sum spent over a student per year. Of course, it would change because there would be government and private institutions. But then, is this a quality of education that we would like to impart? And these issues bring us to the topic on hand, that do we want to develop an entrepreneurial mindset in our students? So when I was looking at this topic, I looked at it from two perspectives. From a very narrow perspective, can entrepreneurial traits be, taught? Can the skills and the knowledge be imparted to a student so as to start and grow his business? So that's the narrow perspective. The broader perspective is, uh, leave alone that he wants to start a business. He can also do a job. What we need to develop is an entrepreneurial mindset. So what do we mean by an entrepreneurial mindset? That the student has to be curious. He has to look at opportunities. He has to be creative. He has to take some risk. He has to go out, learn continuously, be resilient to changes. And this is what we are trying to look at. So we're looking at a growth mind, a learning mind. Like we have a concept of learning organizations, we must have a concept of learning individuals. Now, the point is this being imparted currently? So there are certain theories behind entrepreneurial education and a lot of literature review, which I would have showcased. The overall, if you look at the literature, it says that one, yes, entrepreneurial traits can be imparted through education. So that's a positive indicator to us. What we need to do is equip our students with, firstly, proper knowledge, second, relevant skills, third, network building abilities, fourth, they must be exposed to role models. So they must be exposed to people from the industry, entrepreneurs, startup founders, businessmen. They must be able to interact with these people so as to come to know of the real world problems. And that will develop their thinking skills. That will nurture them. So the pedagogies that we have been looking at, and there are of course papers which have said that in developed countries, the way they teach entrepreneurship or any other courses caters to the higher order thinking skills. So their pedagogies are really innovative with a lot of industry exposure, internships, live projects, research-based assessments or assignments. While in the underdeveloped countries, we still are in the rhythm of teaching them in a typical classroom environment with the conventional pedagogies. So we are still catering to the lower order thinking skills. So we need to jump from the lots to the hots. That is one thing that we need to do. Uh, the question, I think, is not of ability. We have manpower, we have the ability, we have the digital infrastructure. We are a hub of family owned businesses and SMEs. So the question is not of ability. If you talk of the Indian economy, year on year, budgetary allocation for education has been growing. So again, it's not a question of ability at all. Probably the question is of willingness. Are we ready or are we prepared to make that change? So I give rest over here with the summary that an entrepreneurial mindset can definitely be developed through education. but it has to come from the management side, from the teacher side, and ultimately also there has to be contribution from the student side, because it will be a product of active and experiential learning. Thank you.